Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm Anna Heslop and today my guest is Hawke's Bay farmer Hugh Ritchie, the newly anointed Arable Farmer of the Year. Welcome and congratulations.
Thanks, Anna, and good afternoon, everybody.
So we're going to touch on that Arable Farmer of the Year thing, what sorts of things they looked at and what you're doing there that they thought was good. And then we'll have a catch up because we spoke earlier this year, not long after Cyclone Gabrielle, and see what progress has been made since February, March around there. So first of all, let's just have a quick run through of the Ritchie farming operation.
The Ritchie family operation, we'd like to say, is still a family farm. So it's sort of second generation. Well, I'm second, third coming along, but it's now just over 2,000 hectares. Started off at about 300 hectares in 62 in 62 when the property was bought off the Williams family. And we've just continued to go through. And since that sort of 72, Father David had run a sort of 5-year rotation. So it's been pretty much a cornerstone of the cropping is to run a 5-year constant rotation. So that's been in play now for, nearly over 50 years, which I think has really helped us maintain the ability to continuously crop. And again, apart from a ryegrass seed crop in the process, the ground has been continuously cropped for that time. And then obviously integrating irrigation in 2000 and at the same time strip tillage and direct drilling to try and really look after, following my sort of Massey University days and soil health, trying to manage the soil structure and maintain the soil quality to keep things going, because we were noticing that with constant ploughing and cultivation that we were getting harder and harder to get seed beds and get things established well.
So of that, say, 2,000 hectares, how much of it is in crop? And how do you define crop?
Well, intensive crop was about 880 hectares. So that's sort of half of the business is sort of traditional far crops. So maize, wheat, barleys, grass seeds and vegetable seed. And then the other half now is a big component is processed vegetables. So we're doing carrots, peas, beans, sweet corn, and some export squash. That gives us a diversity. And again, I suppose, that 880 hectares, probably there's about 40 or 50 that's a second crop of beans. Going in after peas is really the only second crop. So that's pretty much, and we're doing that with two guys and two and a half if you call me the half.
You're probably there away as much as you're there, Hugh.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So are there any animals at all on that 880 hectares, or are the animals elsewhere on the property?
No, then we base unit on the pastoral block, which is a sort of a 1,400 hectare block that's just south of Hastings, and then we run about 10,000 lambs. So the policy is not to have cattle on the cropping ground. So the only livestock through the cropping area is winter finishing lambs, and cattle really we just have said it's we run on a 3 hectare rotation, so small mobs rotating around rather than having specialist feed crops or strip grazing.
And those lambs do play a pretty key role on those cropping blocks, though.
Well, it's traditionally we've sort of set ourselves up as a heavyweight one trade system, and that has given us pretty good margins for the last couple of years. This year is a little bit lighter on margin just due to the market dropping a wee bit, but certainly the beef and the lamb finishing is a critical component of the business in terms of just mixing things up. If we have serious droughts, obviously that impacts on the livestock operation, but the crops generally with irrigation do pretty well. And last year, basically apart from the early barley and wheat crop we got off and we just managed to get the ryegrass off. Everything else was washed away. So the beef and lamb actually has provided a very stable source of income, for the business in light of that. So yes, we absolutely find the two marry up very well, and you have to manage it accordingly. But it is we think, a pretty sustainable system.
So when you were nominated for the Arable Farmer of the Year award, obviously there's some kind of judging process. What sorts of things were the judges interested in when they were talking to you? Was it all the sorts of things we're discussing now? Did they have any tricky questions?
Probably the trickiest ones were sort of, it was across the board. We have school children come out and look over the property. We try and help with the kids, ag classes and do things. But probably that was the one that was, can we do more around bringing in, trying to expose the farm to the younger generations and get people to understand farming. And so absolutely, that's probably an area that we could do more of. But certainly, the same thing, understanding the sustainability, the direct drilling, the strip tillage, the irrigation monitoring, all the things that sort of we see as good practice, and the rotation is a big cornerstone of that in terms of how do you manage that with the livestock and keep the crop. As I said, I suppose 50 years continuously cropping shows that it's not, we must be doing something okay.
You just talked then about some of the monitoring going on. What sorts of technology and tools, high-tech stuff have you got on farm?
So on the irrigation, on most of the irrigators, we're now running VRI, which is as much to manage the water flows and make the little water we have got go a long way. But equally, it does give us the ability to manage, areas within the paddock and things like that. We use instead of using sort of our own systems, we use hydro services as a monitoring for the irrigation scheduling. Again, to give us a real feedback on where we should be watering and when. But again, with a deficit, we've only got barely 3.5 mils a hectare per day. So once we get into full season, it's really just trying to keep everything going as long as you can and slowly going backwards or slowing how quickly you go backwards. But again, that's where the rotation is quite useful because, post-Christmas, really most of the cereals and things are finished. And so then you're into the vegetable crops and so we can then concentrate the water onto those areas. Might we mean a little bit of autumn, establishing winter feed in the autumn and not having water to go across those, but at least we guarantee that the cash crop side is covered off before we have an issue with water.
Are there any other tools or technologies that you're considering at the moment?
The focus at the moment has really been trying to tidy the place up. We've found a new machine just recently called a forestry mulcher, which is amazing at destroying everything that is organic, and putting it back in the paddock. But what else are we looking at? Obviously, drying, looking at some of the sensing now. I think there's some really quite clever stuff with the satellite imagery coming through. I've always sort of thought that if we can get to the point where we can get that sort of biological analysis done accurately, and that really starts us down the road of targeting and prescriptions. But currently, I think the ability to analyse without all the ground truthing means that it's a very time-consuming thing to try and get prescriptions right. So, but that's something I think that's coming through that I think is really quite exciting. And I've seen a couple of examples of people showing what the satellite imagery can do, and when you match it up with your practice on the ground, you can actually see the differences. So that's quite encouraging that we're getting very close to the ability to now start running with that.
Cool. Now, you mentioned your forestry mulcher. Let's move on to what's been happening since February. Most of the home block was underwater. You got some early crops off, lost most of the rest. I seem to recall there was a portaloo floating around somewhere. What progress has been made since then?
Oh, we found another one of those. They weren't in very good state, but we certainly have enough componentry for at least lose, I think. We've got lots of fridges and freezers. We found another 2 gas bottles this morning. So since we last spoke, got the maize crop off, which has actually been surprisingly good for the season. I mean, we yield-wise has been good. We lost probably more area than we thought we had originally, but yield-wise, it's actually been pretty good. But that's really where when we talked, I think we were shifting silt and sand and filling holes and re-leveling, and we probably re-leveled a 250 hectare block, really, once we'd filled it all in and got it, re-established. That's showing definite nutrient weaknesses in places, especially where the big holes were. And then now we're getting back into the maize ground that has got all the debris through it and piles. And so we worked with the family and even mum and dad. I mean, dad's in his 80s, and they both came down and were helping pick up sticks and going through sort of working, cleaning out all the areas with the digger, and then picking up all the loose stuff so you could get drills and things through it. But it just got to the point where you could work for a week and do 300 odd meters. It was just crazy. So I looked around, and the guys had this forestry mulcher, and so he brought it down and had a go, and it just basically tidies everything up. It'll do 400 mil logs, so not that we're putting that through it, but it just means that once you've gone through the paddocks, they're ready to start putting crop back into. So that's been really, really good find. So we're into the last big block of maize now. And it will probably be a couple of weeks in there to try and go through all the piles, pick up all the tyres, a lot of beehives. Tyres is the worst thing because they just don't do anything, and you can't burn them, you can't do anything. So it's just sort of sifting all the tyres out. We've probably got 2,000 tyres now. Good Lord. And then we'll be into the last of the fencing, we've done about 8 Ks of fencing, probably another 2 Ks of fencing to go.
So thinking back to your farm management practices, do you think that the way the farm has been managed and the way the soils have been managed impacted on how good or bad a result the impacts were from Cyclone Gabrielle?
Look, absolutely. Without the strip tillage and the direct drilling, I think we would have lost probably all of our topsoil, or probably half the property. As it was, we had a couple of blocks where we had strip tilled the beans at sort of 50 centimetre centres, and we lost quite a lot of that soil. But the squash ground that was strip tilled at 1.5 metre centres, we lost very little and just sort of lost really the rows. So I think over some of that area, and especially in the bean ground, we lost probably 6 inches of topsoil and then gained 2 inches of silt. And so we're still trying to mix and incorporate silt, and we've still got a big area of probably around 14 hectares. It's over 400 mils deep in silt, which is we're struggling to find a plan yet that to deal with that, to get it back into some semblance of order. But we're getting there, and that's the last sort of headache to face at the moment. But certainly we've had to put some more drainage in, but undoubtedly and that's probably the one thing I have noticed. Now we've come out of the winter, the fact that we had direct drilling and strip tillage for so long, I think lost sight of how good our macro porosity was and how good the drainage was, and the silt's just filled all of that up, and the ground is just not moving, and it's just sort of dead in terms of moisture, and even if you dig down, we put a new tile line in the other day. I went through a ridge, and there was almost like artesian water coming up through the trench. It was just so saturated. So that's been probably. You don't realise how good you've got it till you haven't got it, if you know what I mean.
So that's going to be an ongoing challenge for a while yet.
Well, I think, hopefully we'll get it warm and get things going, and worms are amazing how quickly they'll get on top of things, and the more they do, the more they'll get going. So I'm not too concerned. We'll probably have to look at a lot more retaining residue over some of that area that we've had to re-level on, and just leave it all there. That's where it's been quite good, be able to go through with this mulch and just hammer all the wood and all the pieces back in, because it's just all going to be organic matter in 6 months. So that's been quite useful. So conceptually, I think we're on the right path, and we just have to do more of the same and probably really focus on that organic matter now in those areas that have been severely damaged.
So you are intending to get something in the ground right across the farm this summer, spring, summer?
That is the plan. The 14 hectares will be the one area that we might struggle with, but we're going to have to do something because it's sort of part of a 90 hectare block with a pivot in it, and the pivot at the moment couldn't get round. So somehow we're going to have to make the pivot be able to move. But apart from that, we might leave some of that ground behind. And again, one of the issues we've got is initially we thought we might try and sort of flip it almost like the West Coast and mix the silt in with the subsoil and then put the topsoil back on. And that's still on the cards, but there's a hell of a lot of hours in there to do that. The other bit is to then try and maybe halve the silt, put half of it and spread it around and spread that over the rest of the block and dilute the silt that way. But again, then until we can, it's too wet to get near it at the moment, and then by the time it is dry enough, the crops will be in, and so that'll sort of hinder us doing that until the autumn anyway. So yeah, we're just sort of working on that as the too hard basket at the moment. If we only leave 14 hectares behind this season, I think that'll be a pretty good effort.
Yeah, you're pretty optimistic, Hugh. Congratulations.
No, thank you for that. But again, it's been great support, talking to the Dirk and people around how can FAR help, and they were always on the phone asking. Again, coming back to I suppose that's the great, the good thing about FAR being on the ground. How can we get answers or ideas to put in play to address some of these issues, and that's been good to see. Again, the vegetable growers, FAR got together and worked with those guys, so we had a very good collective right across Hawke's Bay and even up into Gisborne in terms of people having ideas or just talking that stuff through, and that was pretty strong too.
Well, thank you very much, Hugh. Listeners, wherever you are, have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.